Okay, for the value of everyone's time and also just knowing that this is a pretty quick, short and sweet 30 minutes. We want to make sure we have plenty of time for our guest panelists to talk. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And first of all, just introduce myself. My name is Laura Miller. I am thrilled to be here with you this afternoon and present a webinar with some amazing folks that are going to talk about our guiding question. This is lessons learned from testing season and preparing for next year. I hope you all are surviving May. I was on a meeting not too long ago with the district test coordinator that gave me my favorite catchphrase from now on and how I will always look at May. She says it's the 100 days of May. It feels like it lasts forever and there's so many moving parts and things going on. And I think that's really true. The good news is that even though I know everyone on this call still has lots of hurdles to jump and hoops to go through, but summer is on the horizon and hopefully that means some rest and relaxation in some way for all of you. So I will go ahead and just quickly review the agenda. We are going to obviously introduce our guest speakers and discuss that guiding question, and then we'll have some opportunity for live questions and answers. The chat feature is also enabled. I'd like to introduce Carrie Bartholomew. She's also joined us from Test Town and Education Advance, and she's going to be keeping an eye on the chat as well. But let's go ahead and talk about who is joining us. We have some great folks. I want to introduce Chris Cordell, who is a district system-wide testing guru at Austin ISD. Ben Estrada, the Director of Assessment, Research, and Evaluation for Los Fresnos CISD, and Rachel Roepke, who's Data Analysis and Testing Coordinator for Bastrop ISD. And if you three don't mind, maybe just take a couple of seconds to tell what your role is, maybe how long you've been in your role, and just a quick introduction of yourself as well.
Sure. My name is Chris Cordell. I'm Director of Systemwide Testing in Austin ISD, which covers all state and federally required tests. We also do CBE and norm reference tests, a few other things in my office. I've been in Austin for 10 years. This is my 10th year in Austin. I've been in the district testing director role for 14 years, I guess, in a medium-sized district. And in Austin, which would be a large district. I was also a campus administrator and teacher before that. So I've been in education for over 20 years. And I'm happy to be here today.
Hey guys, my name is Ben Estrada. As the slide says, I am the Director of Assessment, Research, and Evaluation for Los Fresnos. This is my 31st year in education. I've been doing testing in some way, shape, or form for about 24 years now. I've been in Los Fresnos for 10 years. And basically, just like Chris, I basically handle pretty much anything related to testing comes through my office, but mostly I do a lot of number crunching here for the district and reporting. So I'm happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Roepke. This is my first year as a district testing coordinator, and in Bastrop, I handle all of our local assessment systems and district state testing systems and all the reporting too, as Ben had said. So I've been in education for 15 years. I was a campus testing coordinator while being an administrator at the middle school and high school level, and also high school math teacher.
Wow. Well, thank you all again for being here. And I want to just jump straight into our guiding question. And this is kind of a big topic. So it's probably going to go its own direction some different ways, but spring testing is almost over. What have you learned and how you can prepare for next year? And Rachel, I thought you would be probably a great person to start with just because this is your first year and would have some unique insight. So we're just going to start with Rachel, and Ben and Chris, feel free to jump in or bounce off each other. We want it just to be a conversation. So we're ready.
Okay. Well, I wrote down 3 big things that I could think of that I really learned this year. The first is paper materials are a pain, and I'm really thankful that we don't have many paper materials. So not with Test Town necessarily, but a lot of my paper materials came wrong. And so I wondered if that was like a problem when we had a lot of paper materials. So that was one thing I definitely learned is I'm really thankful for online testing and that we don't have very many paper materials. The next thing is, and we can expand on this, Ben and Chris, but the next thing is definitely Test Town is my best friend. It was my best friend when I was a campus testing coordinator, but it really is my best friend as a district testing coordinator. I mean, all the reports that I can just upload into Tide make my life so much easier with the embedded supports and eligibility, just so much time saving right there. So Test Town truly is my best friend when it comes to all the things to prepare for testing. And then the last thing I thought of is reflection for next year. Don't let my campus testing coordinators create their own groups, because that really messes up my abilities to be able to run reports in Test Town to make things upload. They create their own like star 3 through or star, third grade, instead of using the one that's already designated. So that was one thing I think I'm going to work on for next year, is how to communicate that we use the pre-built test groups in Test Town. So those are some big ahas that I had.
Well, I can tell you, Rachel, that paper materials are and have always been a pain. I will say to your point about them being wrong this year, I had quite a few. We obviously in Texas, we only had Star Alt 2 for the most part for paper materials and a handful of others. But yeah, I had a lot of issues with mismatched form numbers and sets and things like that. So that was interesting this year. I will also echo that for being completely online in Texas this year was great. I didn't have any more holdouts like I had last year, trying to hang on with every bit of their being to the paper assessments, because kids are going to do better on paper. At least that's their thought. So we had a smooth transition in Austin this year to all online, but the paper issue, I think we all experienced that, even with this small number of paper products that we had. I am watching the legislature very closely about this 3%, 1% back and forth with some of the bills on that, and how we're going to manage that. I've actually also already talked to Dr. Crow about the possibility of that being a Test Town feature if we have to manage knowing what 3% of our population is for paper for next year. Do you have those problems, Ben?
No, and actually I was going to ask you, so I mean, if it goes up to 3%, I mean, did you have a lot of holdouts in your district? Because I mean, this year last year I was the resident bad guy. So I fought with everybody that wanted paper. So no, I got no Christmas cards from anybody last year. But this year, I mean, once we got everybody on board, I only had 8 paper testers, or actually 8 tests in the entire district that were paper.
Yeah, I had a similar number because I was last year they were allowed to do what they wanted, and I still probably had about 60% of my elementary campuses test on paper. This year I didn't get a whole lot of pushback, because for the last 3 years I've been telling them they weren't going to have a choice this year. Little disappointed in the state agency when they kind of backed off a little bit with the 1% allowance, but I didn't really have anybody. The only tests I had paper this year were for visually impaired students that couldn't take a paper test or couldn't take an online test. Gotcha. So I was happy with that, and it went smoothly. We gave over 103,000 online tests this year without any major issues. So that went very well. So some of the bills here in Texas that say they want to have 3% because they're afraid that the technology is going to have issues, I don't think that's a valid concern. Yeah,
no, I agree, absolutely. And I can tell you that this year, I mean, we had minimal technology issues, but the teachers now that are on board, they just absolutely love online testing now. I don't think they'll ever go back to paper. They just love that the freedom of, like Rachel was saying, like no paper materials, no answer documents, having to come back and pick up more materials. It's like none of that. So yeah, that was really, really nice here too. But to kind of jump on what Rachel was talking about in terms of Test Town, one of the things that I learned this year was I actually learned more about the other softwares that Test Town works with, specifically Success Ed and Project L, because it's important for me anyway, to know what data is coming in and basically what's being reported out in our uploads. So and that actually identified gaps and actually errors that I had in my mapping in terms of certain accommodations. So the more I learned about Success Ed, the more I was able to work better with how to map those particular attributes and accommodations in test town. So I did learn an awful, probably more than I should.
Yeah.
Do y'all work like that as well? I mean, in terms of working those softwares?
So one of the things that I wrote down that I learned this year was one, this was our first year with Test Sound in Austin ISD, and I'm sure Laura will probably agree. We probably had one of the most unusual onboardings and extended onboardings ever in the history of Test Sound. I mean, we signed the contract back in August, but due to all of the integrations with all of our systems here in Austin ISD, I was unable to even roll it out to campuses until mid to late February, because that's how long it took for us to iron out all of the wrinkles or fill in the potholes is really what they were. They weren't wrinkles, they were potholes, very large ones, sinkholes swallowing whole cities. So that's how long it took us to get going. So I didn't even get to fully use Test Sound, I don't think, with my campuses as much as I wanted to, because by the time we rolled it out, we were leaning up against test
Just to
season.
kind of highlight, I just want to throw out, you changed accommodation vendors in the middle of us onboarding, correct? Like,
Correct.
yes. So I will just share that was a challenge, right? Because you had an existing accommodation vendor, and then you were changing your IEP and 504 vendor at the same time. So just kind of, I mean, that did extenuate circumstances for sure. But you know, that's one thing that, and I didn't mean to cut you off, and I definitely want you to keep going, but just to kind of keep everybody on the same page, because we do have folks from other states as well. We will ingest accommodations from different vendors and providers, and Texas has lots of choice and freedom. You can choose whoever you want to provide all of your accommodations. We have districts that have different vendors for all types. Some of our states have state level systems that everybody in the state uses. And so one of the things that we do work through is making sure those accommodations come in through Test Town, and then we reflect them for your users. However, I've had even some conversation, people say, well, hey, can you all fix the people that are putting it in the vendor? And I'm like, well, you know, if we had some magic wand, right, that we could wave and have, you know, control over that, we would love to do that, but we can't. So we do just reflect what is being put in. And I think all of us have had to work through that in some form or fashion. But I'm hoping, Chris, I'm not leading you, and I know you're going to tell me if I'm saying the wrong thing. Hopefully highlighting all of that does eventually end up making things easier for your users being able to see it come straight in. So I don't know if that's what you have found yet or not. And if not, let us hear it. But
No, I have actually, and where I was going to end up with that, kind of on the same thread that Ben had, is Test Town actually helped find some other issues that should really be outside of my lane, but I find myself being pulled into other lanes all the time and fixing things for other places all the time. But we found some PEMS coding issues with courses when we were getting ready for our Star Alt 2 stuff. We found some miscommunication. We found out because of some miscommunications from some other departments, people were making incorrect, or they were not documenting things correctly in certain systems. All of that, we found those because things weren't coming to Test Town correctly or coming out of Test Town correctly. And I will say that in so many times this year, somebody would call me and say there's something wrong with Test Town. Then I kept telling them, no, I don't think so. I think there's something wrong with Test Town. Only knows what we're telling it to know. It doesn't create any information. So I will thank you for that. And Test Town works so well, actually. I have people trying to make Test Town do things that it's not even supposed to do. I have departments saying, can we use Test Town for this? No. Okay, it's amazing, I guess, because Test Town works so well that they think it can do all these other things. And I keep having to tell them that that's not what it's built for. It's not made to put RTI decisions in or things like that, which is what they want to use it for. So if y'all want to expand, you probably could.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. I mean, Kelly, my district testing coordinator, taught me very well to work with all of your special programs people from the beginning. And so when I got here in Bastrop my first year, that's what I did. I met with all of the special program leads in the district and went through accommodations, what should be in their system and all the things. I thought it had it all worked out. And then, yeah, what comes into Test Town is what it is. And we were able to find so many more issues that I thought I had cleaned up some things, and I did some cleaning, but Test Town really highlighted more of our things that we needed to fix, and systems and processes too. We also have like 3 different vendors that are coming in, one for 504, one for, different things. And so, people would tell me all the time, that was one of the things I wanted to ask. I came in and said I was going to lock down manual changes in Test Town for accommodations, because when I came in, they had all these alerts. They weren't using Test Town the way it was supposed to be. Nobody was using the accommodations. They would just manually go in and read what they put on what was on the paperwork and go into Test Town and change it. And I said, no, that's not how Test Town works. It reads what's there. If it's not there, then it's not there. I'm telling you, something is wrong in your paperwork. And so they just didn't believe me, and I locked them out of the system. And yeah, I didn't get Christmas cards either, Ben. And so, it was so hard. But then I kept telling them, I was like, it went great for December for high school. I'm telling you guys, it's going to be fabulous. And they kept saying, no, we need you to open it. We need you to open it. And then, they would send me a list of all these things that were wrong. And then I got to take screenshots of the kids' paperwork. And I'm like, this is what their paperwork says. Look, this matches Test Town. This is not wrong. If you want that accommodation, you have to go back to the meeting because you did not put it in there in the proper place. So I agree, but I don't know if that was the best plan of attack, is to lock them out, but that's what I did. So I wanted to kind of see from y'all more experienced, if that's what you do in your district, is lock where they can't make manual changes.
Not so much. I don't really have anybody wanting to make manual changes. They kind of go with what's in Test Town. But I always tell them, it's like, look, I'm an 80s kid. So just remember Reagan's mantra, trust but verify. Whatever's in there, take a look at it, print it out, and just spot check. You don't have to check all of them. Just pick 5 random kids, look at what's in Test Town, what's in Cambium that was loaded from Test Town, and then look at Success Ed. If they all match, you're in good shape. If you find something wrong, let me know. Let's go take a look at it. And basically, that's a process. Those are the process that we use for all of my campuses. But one of the things that I did learn, and this is Chris and Rachel, this will probably agree. So last year, Cambium has always said, once you load kids, you don't have to delete them. Okay. Last year I did. So campuses were sending me, Ben left, take them off. Rachel left, take them off. This year I said, I'm not dropping anybody. So just leave them all in there. And what I learned was it's the same amount of work because you're still checking, they're still checking, and they're saying, hey, Ben's not here. Can you delete him? I'm like, no, because he may come back. Just leave him there. If he goes somewhere else, he'll get picked up, So next year, we're just going to leave them where they are, and see what happens. So I know it drives people crazy with the whole completion rates, but that's a small price to pay for it.
No, we did the same thing, Ben. And then for part of our check-in process, they had to turn in their test status code report. And for those kids, they had to put in the column withdrawn. So we didn't allow any blanks. So if they didn't take the test, they had to go and fill in that it was either a manual score code or a withdrawal date if they didn't get picked up by somebody else. I had the same philosophy that you did, as far as they might come back. If they get picked up by another district, then they'll disappear on their own. If not, it just means they didn't go anywhere else.
Yeah, but and probably for you, Chris, this probably plays more. I don't know how big Bastrop is, but we're just under 11,000 kids. But one of the things that would always happen right before testing, they'd be like, I'm looking at my testing list. Rachel's not here. He came in last week. Chris is not here. He came in 2 weeks ago. So with the Test Town talking to eSchool, once you download that registration file and upload it again, 3 through 8, it moves everybody that moved. Mm-hmm. So now my campuses don't have to tell me who came in and who's no longer there, because it already updates. And that's what one of the things that I do with the registration file, just every other week, I just upload 3 through 8, just one more time. It's like, boom, there are the changes. All the site changes are in there, and everything is good to go.
Yeah, we do the same thing. And I'm about 72,000 kids. But we operate very similarly. And Rachel, I was going to tell you a while ago, I had the exact same conversations many times over this year as far as it's not in test town's not right. Nope, it's not test town, it's not right. It's you need to go back to your system. It only knows what, it's like I said earlier, it only knows what we tell it to know. We're not telling it to know it. That means you didn't put something correctly.
Yeah.
Can't tell you how many times I said, well, we just had the meeting. When did you have the meeting? Today? Oh, well, of course it's not in there yet. It doesn't just, you have to at least wait overnight. So many people just think everything happens instantaneously and automatically for everything but no, we had the same, I didn't lock them out of manual changes, but I told them there wouldn't be any good to make them because they would get overwritten every night anyway when the new files came in. So they needed to make it correct in the source system so that it would be right every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, they just left them in alerts. I mean, like I said, when I got here, each campus had like 340 alerts, and I'm like, what is this? So how do you even know who just had a meeting? But yeah.
Like, click the button. It's there for a reason. Click it.
They don't trust it. Well, now they do. They did not trust
Oh
it.
yes,
Now they do.
so many don't trust it. This says there's something changed on the kid. Well, that probably means that it did change on the kid.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay that something changed.
At least it's better than, I've always joked like how many spreadsheets, right? And then people trying to, I don't know, like just trying to remember who told me what, when they told it to me. I mean, I don't know. It just cuts out all that communication, which I love that part of it. I think that's my favorite part. But hey, I want to go around if it's okay with you all and kind of putting you on the spot. What is your biggest piece of advice for any district test coordinator going into next year? New, not new? Like, what would you recommend, especially at this point in the year? It's May. What would you be doing or preparing? Biggest piece of advice to get ready for the new year?
So for me, what we do, we probably wait till after summer testing before we do this. So because we still have one more round of testing here in Texas with high school students. But we will typically go back through my entire staff. I have a staff of 4 other people. We will meet and talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what do we need to change for next year. I know one of the things is going to be having a full year with test town will be helpful. There will be a lot of things we won't have to go through next year. So I already know that's going to be a positive. Here in Texas, since there's a legislative session and there are quite a few testing bills in play, we also kind of review those to see what's going on for next year. Our state agency should be releasing something around the beginning of August that will tell us the changes. So we'll be prepping for all of those. And then we start prepping our trainings for next year and our timelines for next year when we need to do everything. So we start laying that out now so that we know when we need to put stuff in. For us here in Austin, we're going to have some changes to our local assessments calendars, which will impact my department. We're going to start adding in some interims, which are provided by the state. So that's going to kind of change some of our testing, some of our training schedules that we'll have to look at. So that's kind of what we would be doing now. It's calendaring out for next year and then looking at what went well and what didn't go well and what we need to change moving into next year. Because when we start rolling in August, we have to have all that information already out to all the campuses about how things are going to work this year or next year.
Rachel?
I would say, yeah, calendaring and timeline. So I feel like I, just lived it. So I don't know if I did all the things, in order or perfect, but like I said before, meeting with your special programs individuals, I think, and going through accommodations and what's the wording in that system and what does that mean? And then how does that translate to state accommodations is really important. Getting timelines for that, like trying to work with when are we going to try to finish all of our meetings so that accommodations can be finalized before assessments. So we're not trying to have meetings the week of assessments or prior to. So that calendaring and timeline, working with technology, getting to know that department really well, making them aware of your assessment dates in your district, becoming good friends with them so they can keep you informed of anything that's happening and updates and all that. And they can be mindful of the assessment calendar. And then, yeah, scheduling all of your trainings, thinking through, I'll be reflecting on what trainings I did this year and how can I change those? Do I need that many? Do I need more? Do I need different topics? And then reserving the space. If your district is like mine, we've tried to pass several bonds and we finally have one, but space is really limited. And so trying to find places to meet is always a challenge. So getting it on your people's calendar early and reserving your spaces for all your training is what I was thinking of doing soon.
I think for me, it would be to really internalize the data that comes out of TestHound. Because a lot of times the testing coordinators will pull out a file and they're not sure what they're looking at. So if you can go in there and guide them and show them, as like, look, this is what this file is going to look like. This is what this file is going to look like. This is what it's telling you, so that they know, they're not just grabbing it and uploading it without even taking a look at it, but to actually take the time to learn what's coming out and what it's supposed to look like, if that makes sense. Because that way, when you spot those errors. For example, like we were talking about meeting with our special services department. If you download your file and you've got 200 kids with speech to text, okay, that's a very specialized accommodation. 200 is quite a bit. That's one of those things you're going to want to, all right, let's take a look at this. Why do we have so many of these kids, and work through it that way? Plus, it will help you, make sure you don't get in trouble by giving accommodations that students really don't qualify for. And that happened every now and then. I think, Chris, you were talking about cleaning up, some mismatches in our data files. But yeah, I think it's the whole knowledge is power. Learn as much as you can about what's going into the system. When it comes out, what does it look like? And being able to explain it to your people and saying, hey, this is what you see. This is what you're looking at. This is what you want to pay attention to.
Y'all are awesome. Those are all just great pieces of advice. 30 minutes goes quick, but I do want to open it up to see if there are any questions. So far, nothing has come through the chat. I did have a Q&A just to say, such a distinguished panel of speakers today. It's nice to hear that others experience some of the same problems I struggle with. Thank you for bringing this group to us today. So we do love knowing, I think that's part of what we want to do is bring people together. I think our state organizations, so many states are now forming organizations. Texas has had one for a really long time. Now others are getting on board and knowing that there is a wealth of information to share with each other. Elda Garcia and NATP, the National Association of Testing Professionals, is doing the same work, trying to bring people together to communicate and help people not feel like they're on an island, and again, share these experiences. And that's one thing that we've wanted to do with this particular product, TestHound and Education Advanced, is just bring people together. And these webinars have given us the opportunity to do that. I'm going to see. Okay, so here's a question. Anyone else struggle with all the different administrations instead of just one combined spring administration? Anybody want to touch on that?
I actually kind of liked that. I thought having the subject bands on the different weeks kind of helped my campuses spread it out. Now, where it did cause a problem specifically with TestHound was some of them thought that once they created sessions for their RLA tests so that we could grab their accommodations, that those accommodations would carry over, and they didn't make their other test sessions. And so we were kind of scrambling at the end to fix that. It was easy to fix once we knew what the problem was, but I didn't struggle with it. I actually kind of liked it that way. We did our check-ins we will next year do our check-ins that way as well. We'll do it by those subject areas at the end of each of those weeks to try to help make sure. In a district our size, one of the problems is trying to make sure everybody has everything in time on the state vendors timeline. So we will tighten that up a little bit next year based on those grade level, on those subject bands.
Yeah, I'm with Chris. Same thing. I love breaking it up. It just made them easier. And plus, you get to learn from your previous mistakes. So it got progressively better, and it got progressively easier each week we tested.
This is a good question. I would love for y'all, just because you're all experienced users, and I know it's a little hard to get an exact number, but approximately how much time do you all feel school test coordinators save by using TestHound?
Well, I would say mine that jumped in and used it to its full capacity saved quite a bit. I had several very experienced campus testing coordinators who had never used TestHound before, who once they got their training in February, jumped right in with both feet, and they had everything ready to go by by the end of March. They were ready. They had everything set and ready to go. They didn't have to do anything else because they had all their planning and logistics done already. Others who didn't use it to its full potential probably didn't save themselves as much time as they could have, because they wanted to do their old ways. But once they figured it out, they realized they maybe should have jumped on board a little sooner. I think next year I'll have a better idea of how much time it's saving. But I do know those that jumped in with both feet, it saved them a lot of time.
Great. And I even see in the chat, weeks of time, hundreds of hours, I think is what Pam is saying. I'm reading from Kathy. I had some CTCs who would still do everything Excel and then put it test down. I push them to do everything there, and it saved time, and they found possible errors really early. So that's great information to have. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen. Maybe we need to make these an hour next year. I don't know. Do we have hours of time? Probably not, but I do have to wrap it up. I put my email in the chat. And so if anybody has any questions about Test Hound specifically, but I do like to always just share that Education Advance is our parent company, and the whole goal of our company is to provide educators operational efficiencies in a lot of different ways. And so we do have other products. We have a master scheduling product. We have a teacher evaluation product. We have a curriculum product. I'm a former high school guidance counselor, so I'm not going to lie. My favorite one is this new one, Pathways. It is helping people track graduation, CCMR, all the things that, again, I was very manually keeping up with. And so we're excited to offer these things to you. The whole goal of what we were trying to do is to make people's lives easier in education. And that's what I love about my job, and I love about our products. And so thank you for all of you for, first of all you do every day, each and every day. It is not an easy job being in education. I come from it, and just quick, my husband's an assistant principal at a high school. I say this pretty much all the time. He is dying right now. It is a tough place to be. He cannot get to the end of the year fast enough. There's just so many things that are challenging that you all face, whether you be at the district office or on a campus. So thank you for what you do. I hope that you find a way to decompress soon. That was going to be something. Hey, throw that out there if you want to. I was going to ask how do y'all decompress? Like, how do you let go of all the stress of all that's going on? Maybe that's a follow-up question. Maybe maybe we do a webinar on yoga practices. I don't know.
I make my own Zoom backgrounds and don't get to use them.
Sorry, we did not authorize.
We're going to talk about that, Chris. We're going to talk about that.
We were not able to authorize the use of your Zoom background choice. I apologize. But laughing and spending time together and enjoying each other's company, I think that's a good way to decompress too. So thank you all for joining us, and especially thank you to our panel for offering your expertise. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Happy Wednesday, and a great weekend is on the horizon.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura, for setting this up.